Good evening. It was about it's about 15 till. I was beginning to wonder if anybody's going to show up. Then Larry came. Everybody's waiting for Larry to show up. So when Larry came, everybody just came. It seemed like within 30 seconds of one another. There was just everybody coming. So maybe there'll be a few more coming before it's a little dark outside. I don't know if you noticed that, but just a little bit. And so I left my porch light on, so I'll be able to see the way when I walk. So anyway, so it's not too far. I think I can make it. latest reports I've heard on Harry is he's not doing very well. But, yeah. Except I'm sure they're giving him still the morphine and pain. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. There's no need at this point. So just, keep that family in your prayers. It's just, it's a tough process, but it's a process that it is a process that, I don't think you can help but realize God's work in this, how that the human body towards the end, the things that it goes through. There'll come a time when Harry won't really feel pain, and he will likely have a pretty good rally at some point where he'll seem a lot more energy, and sometimes people are fooled and thinking somebody's gotten better, but at that stage it's not. It's just that it's something about that process. I always remember my dad, and his as he would be in and out of consciousness, he would be preaching in the middle of the night. That was memories I always have. And at some point within the hours before he passed, he at one point said, God sent us here to work. Work while we're here. My work is done. It probably won't matter of hours after that he passed away. And it humbles us to the point of understanding how that life is short. And we will all go through a process. I realize some people die quickly, but if you don't, you'll go through that same process at some point in time. And, if you're fortunate enough to have loved ones with you, that will mean so much to them. And it's got to mean something to you, just knowing that people are there. And so just keep that family in your prayers because it is a difficult time, needless to say. Anything else that we need to mention? Uh-huh. I had not heard that. And that's Matthew Shields, was his name? Yeah. You said his funeral is Friday at 10. That's stop. Well, yes. That. Anything else we need to mention? Okay, go ahead. No. This is the time to share. So. Now, I do know that the Reeds will be doing their yearly Thanksgiving, and they welcome volunteers, but I don't know that we've got anything planned on like we normally do. I don't think we did, I think with COVID, but, those are the two you need to talk to about that if you really want to do that, yes. But yeah, nothing. I had asked myself about it, and basically, if enough people wanted to do it, we could do it. But I don't know. That's where people got to go to the elders and say, "We still want to do it. We want to do it." It's a little late to be doing something now. Yes. Yeah. Nope. No. We probably should have announced that we don't have plans to do one this year. But if you want to help out at the Reeds, they will do a lot of meals. They do about as many deliveries, if not more. Yeah. So if you know somebody that's really in need, let them know. Okay. Anything else? Make sure you don't have anything. Okay, we're good. Okay, got it all out. Good. Okay, we're going to continue our lesson in Acts 23. Be of good cheer. And, you know, sometimes it's difficult because we've talked about tragedies, we've talked about Harry and other things. And sometimes it's difficult. You know, there are things that go on that trouble us and bother us. And it could be a variety of things. I mean, I know I get so frustrated at times. I didn't tell you that. It's like, it seems like, I just can't. Every time I think I'm getting a little bit better, it seems like then I have more bad days than good days. And so, and it's just doing regular things. Monday, I went to early vote and went to the courthouse, and something about by the way, the courthouse it's a neat building, has some really neat acoustics inside there, but something about that just did not sit well with me. And so after we got cut in line by a couple, I don't think they meant to, but we was just sitting there, and they went right past us, which, it happens. But anyway, something about the acoustics and the lighting in that building just did not work well with me, and so maybe in a couple of days, I don't know. But, so we do get frustrated, and things or whatever, but this be of good cheer. Think about Paul and what he was going through, and we looked at these things, and so I'm not going to refresh everything. But Paul is making his spiel before the council this time, and of course, he testified before them, giving a defense. And even though it wasn't a great situation, what we see is in Acts 23:11 that it says the following night, this is after he makes his defense to the council, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, whereas you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, you must testify also in Rome." So Paul knew he was going to Rome. When God tells you something, when God makes a promise, God cannot lie, and so we know it to be true. So Paul knew no matter what, he would go to Jerusalem. Now, Paul had the ability to, lay hands on people, to heal. He had certain abilities as far as prophecy and other things. And so there's a lot of miraculous that we no longer live in, that miraculous age. But what we're going to see in tonight's lesson is the providence of God. And we don't live in a miraculous age anymore where people can be raised from the dead, where people that have never walked can just like that get up and run. We don't live in an age where, people that have been blind from birth can just like that all of a sudden see. But we still live under that providence of God, do we not? And make no mistake, I don't think anyone can actually fully explain how that works. But we know that God is arranging things behind the scenes in a way to get His will across. And we're going to see this even in Paul, someone that had this ability, that indeed he would have the divine providence of God. Of course, if we want the Lord to stand by us, we must, with a good conscience, be a witness for Christ. And so we talked about testify, meaning basically the same root word through witness, basically the literal meaning of the word. And so Paul had to testify because he had been testifying already about Jesus Christ. Paul would not be murdered. He must go to Rome. And so, like I say, we know that God, when He says something, is true. Titus 1:2 says, in hope of eternal life, which God, who never lies, promised before the ages began. Now, oftentimes I've talked about how many times do you mean well and have good intentions. You say, well, tomorrow I'm going to do X, or tomorrow I'm going to do Y. That's happened to me some here recently, because I'll say, I've been saying, yeah, I'll work at the concession stand, and it gets closer to time, I'll say, I can't do it. It's just weird, how things work out. You just can't control everything. Sometimes you get sick. I talk about a guy in North Carolina one time that I try to get people motivated to come to Bible class and Bible study. And, we actually do a pretty good job, always have, of the percent of people that show up for Bible study and other things. But a lot of places have really a difficult time on that. And so I was really trying to gear up people to come to Bible study on a Sunday morning. And so one guy finally told me, he said, preacher, you sold me. I'm going to be there next Sunday morning. I say, well, good. And of course, I've heard that enough not to necessarily, you don't write anything in stone, because a lot of times people have good intentions, but they sometimes don't follow through what the commitment is. And so anyway, that Sunday morning came. I looked in now, the audience, and sure enough, he wasn't there. Didn't think too much of it. And then as worship hour started, I noticed he came in, and his clothes were a little muddied and disheveled. And he came to me after services, and he apologized. He said, I had every intention on being there for Bible study. He said, I left and I had a blowout on the way. And so by the time I changed my tire and got here and everything after that, said, it was already past Bible study time. But God, even those things don't happen. God doesn't. When He says something, it will happen. There's nothing that man can do. There's nothing that's going to come up. Weather's not going to change what God has planned. Nothing of that's going to change. And so we need to understand, when God told Paul, you're going to go to Rome, Paul could understand that he's going to be in Rome at some point in time. Now, nothing was guaranteed with Paul after that. And the trip to Rome may not be exactly what he had always thought it would be, but he would get to go to Rome. And we know that Paul had desired to go to Rome. In Romans 1:8 through 13, when he writes his letter, by the way, this letter was written previously, and I wish I had taken time as we studied through the book of Acts, especially with Paul, to have pointed out when he wrote different books. Because some of the books, letters that he's written, had already taken place by this time, including the letter to Rome. He had written this before this time that he's arrested. And in Romans 1:8 through 13 says, first I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed in all the world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of His Son, that without ceasing I mention you, always in my prayers, asking that somehow by God's will I may now at last succeed in coming to you. For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. So apparently at this time, the church at Rome did not have people that had this, had not had an apostle lay hands on them, so they did not have this supernatural. And Paul said, one of the reasons I want to be there, and of course for others, but I want to be there so I can impart some of these things to you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I want you to know, brothers, that I have often intended to come. Now that's, as men and women, that's what we do. We intend to do things. And it doesn't matter what you say. You can say, I intend tomorrow morning to do this. But things can happen, can't they? That can change our course. And Paul had intended to come, but it didn't work out. But thus far have been prevented, in order that I may reap some harvest among you as well as the rest of the Gentiles. So Paul had intended, he desired to come, and it had to really make his heart full that even though he was in prison, he could take courage, he could be happy, because he knew that something that he desperately wanted to do was going to happen. How did he know it? Because God told him. That's what would happen. Christianity does require boldness. Philippians 1:19-21, for I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. As it is, my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Paul would have been excited about the prospects of going to Rome, even though the way he would get to Rome is under arrest. Ever prayed for something and you kind of got it, but not exactly the way you thought you would? I have a good friend, Ted Burleson, and he's actually Doug Burleson's father, and which is a professor at Freed now. But Ted has been a professor at different places himself many years ago, and this was before I even met Haley at the church where he preached. And he had a goal that he wanted to preach every day somehow, some way. It's a little easier to do it on the internet now if you wanted to do that, but back in that day it was a little tougher, so he would find different things he could do. And then he also was very active in a Bible camp that the county would go to, which is a large county, Murray County. A lot of teens would go there. They would occupy this camp, very large camp. And he would go there, and so he went there, and before he even came to camp, he said he'd been desperately praying that things might slow down because he'd gotten this, this thing, and he was just so busy. He was just exhausting himself. And so he was praying. He told me he was praying, every day that things might slow down for him. And so he's at the church camp, and he's playing in one of these softball games where the faculty takes on the, staff takes on the kids. And he hits a ball, a pretty good hit. He's going around first, and he's going second, and he sees them start to throw it, so he decides to slide. Now, I think you get over about 35, 40, you probably just don't need to slide. And so he slid, and he shattered his leg. And so they had to do surgery, and he was, up in a bed. He couldn't. And so needless to say, his life slowed down. So sometimes God does answer our prayers, but maybe not the way we expect. Paul would get to go to Rome, but not of his own free will. Paul would go to Rome under arrest. But yet Paul says, for me to live is Christ and die is gain. Paul would have taken that as a victory because he gets to go to Rome, as he had desperately wanted to do. God gives us good things. The things that we really need, the things that are truly important. In fact, James 1:17 says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. If you have good things in your life, you can thank God. Anything that you think is perfect comes from God. Your children, your family, the good things that we all enjoy. God is good. Romans 8:28, I think to truly embrace this verse requires faith on your part. It says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. Or what happens in your life, if you are called according to His purpose, if you truly love God, then things will work out for the good. Catch a little ringtone there. But anyway, things work out for the good. And so we need to understand that sometimes we see tragedy, we see heartache, we see bad things, but that even those things can work out for the good. In John 16:33, there Jesus tells His disciples shortly before He'd go up on the cross, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. I've always liked this passage for a variety of reasons, because where can we find peace? In Christ. And that's what should separate a Christian from anyone else. We have peace. It defies understanding. Why do we have peace? Well, because we have hope that the world doesn't have. In the world, there's always tribulation. I don't care who you are. There's going to be problems that's going to be happening, not only to you, but to those you love. But Jesus said, take heart, I've overcome the world. By the way, it's interesting, this is said before he dies on the cross. And I believe a lot of this has to do with the fact that it was at the point where he would be put to death on the cross. This is the very night before that he would be betrayed. And I believe what he means by that is by living that sin-free life, he could be that sacrificial lamb. He had overcome sin. And by him overcoming sin, we can take heart because we can have peace in Christ. Now, obviously, we must be steadfast, and but thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Have you ever done a project where you've been working on it and working on it and working on it, and then something comes up and it was all for nothing? I don't think I would be very good. People that stack cars. It seems like all it would take is a gust of wind, somebody open the door and go right over. That'd be heartbreaking. Or whatever it may be. Putting up dominoes and they fell over. That would just be heartbreaking. You see some of those competition shows where they do dominoes and then somebody actually hits one and it's like there's no way to do it. You see some of these cake competitions where they're making these beautiful cakes and then someone trying to take it to the display table, they drop it. It's not very fun. All that we do in this life, we go through troubles, we go through hard times. Can you imagine doing it and all that means? If we're not in the Lord, whatever we do, whether it's good or bad, is going to be. Paul was told to testify. Now, back again in that verse 11, it says, therefore, following the night, Lord stood by him and said, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Rome, in Jerusalem, you must testify also in Rome. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. They didn't like Paul, did they? They'd already stoned him one time, and here they made a plot. Now, it wasn't just one person that did this. It says there were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. How many enemies do you have in your life? How many people do you have that you think, well, they probably don't like you? You have 40 that are willing to make an oath that they're going to kill you? That's pretty severe. Why did they want to kill Paul? Simply because of what he taught about Jesus and the fact that people followed not him, but the words he taught. And so as a result, they wanted to kill him. And they went to the chief priests and the elders and said, we have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. So who is part? This is a conspiracy. Okay? Who is part of this conspiracy? So you got the over 40 that want to kill him and have taken an oath, but who did they go to make complicit with this conspiracy? Chief priests. Can you imagine that? Religious leaders being part of a plot to murder someone? Now, therefore, you, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down. In fact, they're going to make them part of this because they're going to have them, they're going to tell to bring him down, and then they're going to ambush him when he's brought down before the Sanhedrin. As though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes in. Sounds like a good plan, does it not? So the the chief priests and the elders, and they can say they had nothing to do with it, but they're going to say, well, bring him back to him. We want to decide his case more, more fully, because last time Paul introduced about the fact that he believed in the resurrection. That's why he was even in chains, and it created a melee between them. Well, they're going to not have any of that. They're going to have him come, say, we want to hear more, and when they bring him, then these 40 men are going to kill him. Sounds like a foolproof plan, does it not? We know it won't work even if you don't remember what takes place, because Paul's told he must testify as well. Well, once again, we see things in Paul's life where we see the supernatural, but we also see the providence of God in a lot of things. In verse 16 it says, now the son of Paul's sister. What would that make him? Nephew, yeah. Nephew. The Greek language, and a lot of languages are like this, they don't do very well sometimes with certain relations. Cousin, nephew, uncle, all that kind of becomes blended into the same type word. So it's sometimes very difficult. And so here, I think it's interesting, though, the Luke, known for being precise, he wanted to be precise in this. So he doesn't leave it to that ambiguous word that could have been nephew, cousin, whatever. He actually gives specifics. He says, Paul's sister's son of Paul's sister, which, is nephew, as we would say, heard of their ambush. So he went, entered the barracks, and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, Paul the prisoner called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you. The tribune took him by the hand and going aside asked him privately, what is it that you have to tell? So Paul hears it. Paul sends him on to the tribune, and he said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent. So the tribune dismissed the young man, charged him, tell no one that you informed me of these things. Now, we don't know a lot of details here. We don't know Paul's nephew. We don't know if he was a Christian or Jew. What do I mean by that in practice? We're not really told, are we? Could be either way. If he is a Christian, it really would make sense why he would have this burden to try to get word to Paul. But even if he's not a Christian, why do you think he would try to tell Paul? Well, it's his uncle, his family, yeah. So we don't know. It could be either way. But what we do know is God said, Paul, you're going to testify to me in Rome. Now, once again, we don't see anything. Could God have done something miraculous? Well, yeah, he could have. He could have. Paul could have been led out there, and he could have blinded all the men that were trying to kill him. He's done that before. God's done that before. He's done a variety of things. But I think it's interesting. A lot of times, sometimes when the providence of God is at work, sometimes I find that fascinating, because that is the way we live today. Sometimes God puts you in a place to do something right. So what if Paul's nephew had not done the right thing? Well, someone would have, or God would have done so. I think back to Esther. Remember the account of Esther? And Mordecai, as he finds out about Haman's plot, and he gets word to Esther and about she needs to do something. And Esther 4:14 says, for if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. What faith Mordecai had. How did Mordecai know that the Jews would not be exterminated by Haman's plans? Yes. God had all these promises about the seed that would come through Abraham, through the Israelites, through Judah, and all that through David, and all this had been told. God was not done with the Jews yet. God had made these promises. Once again, God never lies. And so Mordecai is saying, this is going to happen. And who knows, maybe this is the whole reason you were put in the place you were. You know, God may have allowed us to be in certain places for the opportunity we may have to tell others. Philip, yes, indeed, there was some miraculous part in there, and the angel told him to go, but Philip was just in a good place where he could go to that Ethiopian, wasn't he? He was ready to teach him. And a lot of times we are put in place of opportunities that we probably won't know beforehand. We look back and say, I think God may have had a hand in me being in that position. What it may have accomplished and what it may have done. So that was Paul's nephew for sure. So anyway, then he called two of the centurions and said, get ready, 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the third hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix. We'll talk about Felix next week, and we'll see he was by marriage related to the Herod clan and all this. What an interesting intermix of all these, much like royalty throughout generations. But anyway, and he wrote a letter to this effect: Claudius Lysias, to the Excellency, the Governor Felix, greetings. And then he gives them a little synopsis. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him. Having learned that he was a Roman citizen, that was the only reason the Roman people really interfered, and desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving of death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against this man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have against him. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with them. When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from, and when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So, anyway, that's how Paul gets to Felix. Paul gets away. By the way, these over 40 men would have been no match for this type of large entourage. But they also left, I don't know if you pay attention to the third hour, they left in the middle of the night. So they left so that nothing could be done. So when God wants something to happen, it's going to happen. So we said, Lord, your will be done. We need to understand that it is Lord's will. It will happen. If it's not, it won't happen. That's the faith we need to possess. Any questions or comments? Okay. Appreciate y'all being here tonight.
Good evening. It's time to begin our devotional period tonight. I'll need a couple of volunteers to word opening prayer, closing prayer. Got one here, one back there. Opening, closing. Thank you, gentlemen. Of course, let's see. Richard Borden will have our devotional tonight. He's ready and prepared. I guess your doctor's visit went okay. Thanks. Good. You're ready. All right. We kind of got through the announcements and different things. Jim was up here, so we'll just get right into the devotional period. If you want to mark your songbooks to number 943, that will be the Song of Invitation tonight, 943. And I want to say, too, Pam, the cookies were delicious. I've almost taken care of all of them. Well, now I have shared. I've given some away, but they were very good. Very, very good. Okay, let's sing number 414. 414. Anywhere with Jesus. I've never led this before, as with many of the songs that I lead, but we're going to give it a try. Anywhere with Jesus, I safely go. Anywhere He leads me in this world below. Anywhere without fear, His joy would reign. Anywhere with Jesus, I am not afraid. Anywhere, fear I cannot know. Anywhere with Jesus, I can safely go. Anywhere with Jesus, I am not alone. Unafraid they'll meet me, and still I own. To His hand they lead me over perilous ways. Anywhere with Jesus is a house of praise. Anywhere, fear I cannot know. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go. Anywhere with Jesus I can go to sleep. When the darkening shadows round about me creep, knowing I shall wake and never more to roam. Anywhere with Jesus will be home, sweet home. Anywhere, fear I cannot know. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go.
Father in heaven, as we come before you this evening, mindful of many who are struggling in pain and illness, various things, and pray for each one. Pray, Father, that you would your hand be upon them to help them to do very hindering this time, the family, as those days draw near. Give them comfort. But ask you to be with those on our prayer list who have been ill and struggling for a long time and trying so very hard to regain their health and continue to give them courage and strength as well. But ask you, Father, to be with those that are away from us, families, young people in school, to all safe and encouraged, and help them to continue to allow you to guide them each day. Be with Richard as he brings his thoughts tonight. Continue to give him strength and knowledge that he has to impart that on others. Pray, Father, that you would lead Steve as he leads us and sing these songs and continue with us through this coming week and through the holidays as well. For it's all in Jesus' name that we pray.
Okay, so let's try number 166. He's my king. 166. All day long, Lord Jesus I sing. He's my song, the joy will ever be. All the while, He keeps my heart bells ringing. For His love is everything to me. He's my King, and oh, I dearly love Him. He's my King, no other is above Him. All day long, in rapture praise I sing. He's my Savior, He's my King. In His light I will be called to glory. With the souls His precious saving grace, going home to sing and tell His story. In the blessed sunshine of His face, He's my King, and oh, I dearly love Him. He's my King, no other is above Him. All day long, in rapture praise I sing. He's my Savior, He's my King.
As we travel down life's road, some of us run, some of us walk, and some of us just kind of stumble along. But regardless of which category we might fit into, most of us experience times that we would describe maybe as a mountaintop experience. By the same token, we all experience times which, when we think of it more as being described by being in the valley of doom and gloom. When we're on the mountaintop, we feel confident, we feel capable that God and I can take care of anything that comes along. When we're in one of those valley periods, we tend to feel overwhelmed and helpless, and maybe even wonder, where's God in all my troubles? But you'd rather be mostly on the mountaintop than mostly in the valley. We'd rather experience as much of the mountaintop experience as we can, even though we know we can't always live there forever, in this life at least. But let's consider a few positive things that might help us to live on a little higher plane as far as our outlook in life. To do this, we want to look at a few things that Paul said in Ephesians chapter 1. Now, if you should get the idea that Jim and I coordinated this because of remarks he made, totally coincidence. But Ephesians chapter 1 is written by the Apostle Paul while he was a prisoner in that Roman jail. We sometimes picture that as a horrible experience. I'm sure it was. But Paul did have a measure of freedom, at least in this episode of his imprisonment. But no doubt it was difficult for him, being restrained as it was, unable to do the things he might want to be doing. Well, we're going to read a few verses from Ephesians, and we will not by any means complete the first chapter of Ephesians. But in the early part of Ephesians chapter 1, we get the impression that there's a reason why we're here. God did not create humanity just to be some kind of a toy or an experiment or whatever you might think of, but we have a purpose. Reading from verse 4, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. Now, don't get too hung up on the words holy and blameless. Some people say, I can't be holy, I can't be blameless. Well, that part comes in from a different lesson, not because of our goodness, but because of what God has done for us. Different subject. Why didn't God just create a host of angels to worship him, adore him, and to do exactly what God had programmed them to do? I'm persuaded that God wanted humanity to serve him by choice, not by coercion, not by some unseen reason or program. He wanted humanity to choose him by choice, even though the choice was not easy. I recently saw a little sign that looked pretty good. It said, by faith, we can accomplish all things, but they may not be easy. What we accomplish by faith is not guaranteed to be easy. But anyway, in verse 4, we see that God chose us in him before the foundation of the world. He had a plan and a purpose for humanity, but only for those who would willingly choose to be born again according to his word. In verse 5 and 6, we can see that there was a family situation anticipated here. In verse 5, if I can get my eyes focused here, he predestined us for adoption to himself as sons through Jesus Christ, according to the purpose of his will, to the praise of his glorious grace, with which he has blessed us in the beloved. 4 or 5 sermons are in that passage. We won't try to do them all tonight. But by speaking of adoption by sons, we get the sense of family. Now, we won't dwell on the semantics of adoption as being born again. That's a totally different thing to discuss. I don't need for us to be concerned about it tonight. But especially I notice in the latter part of that reading, to the praise of his glorious grace. How is it that we would breathe the praise of his glorious grace? It's ironic, it seems to me like, that the wickedness of humanity would provide an opportunity for God's grace to be displayed and fully implemented. Think of it this way. If you were involved in a competition of any kind and you just easily won, would that be any great compliment to you? It's only when we have an adversary, a worthy adversary, that our accomplishments are a credit to us or to God. Whatever we do that's worthwhile is a credit to God if we do it in His name. So it seems strange on the one hand that the wickedness of men could be found to be the praise of His grace. But so it can. If we could measure the wickedness of humanity, would it be equal to the grace of God? No, it would not. God's grace is sufficient to overcome even the most wicked things and thoughts that man has had. If we could place a value on our earthly family, if we value your earthly family, would it measure up to the value of God's family? No, it would not. It truly is a mountaintop experience when you stop and think and realize that we play a part in God's purpose that He planned from the foundation of the world in His mind when He created humanity. We as individuals are a very, very small part of God's purpose. But we're a real part. And we're a part of something much, much bigger than ourselves. Well, this can only barely serve as an introduction to the first chapter of Ephesians. If you stop and take time to read through Ephesians chapter 1, you will see a lot of wondrous things that belong to us right now. God has provided for us redemption, forgiveness of sins. He provided a way that we can be released from Satan's wrath. Now, Satan is a worthy adversary. If you let down your guard, he will get you. Well, that may sound a little crude, but it's true. Satan is a worthy adversary, and we just need to be thankful that God, through Jesus, has provided redemption and provided for a family where He will protect us from Satan. If we are in Jesus' sheepfold, so to speak, if we're to stay there, God will protect us. Now, He doesn't fence us in so we can't walk out of our own way. But if we're to stay in the sheepfold, He'll protect us. We live on the mountaintop. We're protected. Well, as I said, if you would just take time to read through the first chapter of Ephesians, do it slowly. Stop to look and see what's being said. you'll find things that will perhaps not ever keep you from being sad or in the valley for a little while, but they will help you to live life on a higher plane. And that's worthwhile. But we know that there's a possibility that some of us are struggling a little bit with that valley of doom and gloom. Or we may know someone that has something on your mind that you'd like to share with your family here. And this is an opportunity for you to do that very thing. Just come forward and let us know about it as we stand and sing this song.
Have you a heart that's weary, standing alone again? Are you a soul that's needing rest from the burden within? We know my Jesus. We know my friend. Have you heard He loves you, and He will abide to the end. Where is your heart will run? Why does your life reveal? Where is your home for hunger? When our soul reveals, we know my Jesus. Do you know my friend? Have you heard He loves you, and that He will abide to the Lord, from this night we were able to gather here tonight and worship. Thank you for Jim's lesson. Thank you for Richard's lesson. Thank you for this song service that Steve led. We ask you to go with us through the remainder of the week and let us return on Sunday. Worship you again. Be with us through the week and watch over us. Forgive us for our sins.